Hello and welcome to Eye on Africa. I'm Nadia Massey in for Georgia Calvin-Smith this Friday. Here's what's coming up in the programme. As Ivory Coast joins Chad and Senegal in demanding French troops leave its soil, we'll discuss the so-called Frexit from the continent and ask what a smaller French military footprint, what impact that will have in 2025. Beverly Ocheng will join us live from Dakar very shortly. Also in this programme, election officials in the Central African Republic travel across the country as they seek to sign up 1.8 million new voters ahead of local elections in the summer. And with youth unemployment stubbornly high, we take a look at a growing online phenomenon in Kenya, the rise of the social media influencer. First, it has been dubbed Frexit, but unlike the original Brexit, this is not an exit that France chose. This week, in his New Year's address, President Alassane Ouattara of Ivory Coast announced that French soldiers would be leaving the country for good. In November, Senegal and Chad both declared that the former colonial power was out, marking a significant shrinking in France's military footprint in Africa. And this follows similar decisions previously by Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger. So what impact will this have on West and Central Africa in the year ahead? To discuss, I'm very pleased now to be joined on the programme by Beverly Ocheng. She's a senior analyst on Francophone Africa at Control Risks, and she joins us now from Dakar, the capital of Senegal. Good evening to you, and thanks for speaking to us.
Thank you for having me on the programme.
First of all, on the decision then by Ivory Coast, was that announcement by President Ouattara expected?
No, actually it wasn't. And it's significant because Ivory Coast is going into an election this year. And although Ouattara, the current president, has not said if he will vie, he is a strong contender. But there have been perceptions over the years that his government, because of its proximity with Paris, is being influenced by France. And we've even seen the recent accusations by the military leaders of Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. They have said that Ivory Coast is allegedly being used as a rare base by France to destabilize the Sahel. Now, sentiments like these are likely to be hijacked by anti-Western groups that have been growing in the region, even pro-Russia propagandists, and this may be used to undermine the Ivorian election. But by announcing the withdrawal of French forces, Ouattara is deterring that opportunistic sort of movement to try stirring anti-French sentiment in Côte d'Ivoire, which hasn't happened in the past, but also demonstrating that he is confident in the national army, which has been forestalling quite successfully over the years the insurgency from the Sahel. So this wins him political points in an election year and also makes it seem like he is taking ownership over the decision for French forces to leave rather than it coming from France.
Right, and that decision by President Ouattara follows similar ones at the end of last year in Senegal and in Chad. In terms of security, just explain to us what kind of things these French soldiers have been doing and what kind of risk there may be now with these soldiers withdrawing pretty fast.
Well, broadly speaking, French forces have been supporting counterinsurgency across West Africa. At the height of the cooperation about a decade ago, French forces were actively engaged in the front line in Mali, where the insurgency broke out after the coup and the rebels had seized the northern part of the region, in Burkina Faso, where the insurgency spread, as well as in Niger. They were actively fighting against Al-Qaeda and Islamic State militants. They've also been providing tactical training, intelligence to West African armies, so their presence in countries like Côte d'Ivoire, in Chad, in Gabon has been broadly to support that. But then the drastic drawdown, particularly in the Sahel, led to a big security gap, and the national armies haven't quite been able to fit that in. So the insurgency has spiked in the Sahel over the last 3 years. Some of it is trickling all the way down to countries like Benin and Togo. In Chad, they've been supportive of anti-rebel operations. And the concern now is if that gap is not sufficiently filled, then there's a likelihood of the insurgency becoming another risk to the region. In Senegal and Côte d'Ivoire, it's been largely training and support. The insurgency has been contained, particularly in Cote d'Ivoire, and in Senegal, this hasn't really been an issue. But if they do leave quite quickly without a clear handover, it might lead to longer term tensions in relations between France and those two countries, but also a lack of long term sustainable support, because these are countries that still do need some form of training and influence and even intelligence to be able to contain insurgencies within the region.
And just a final question for you. The language used by leaders in a lot of these countries talks about the need to reclaim sovereignty, and there has seemed to be quite a bit of anger towards France in recent years. There are people who say France has a sort of neo-colonialist approach when it comes to lots of these countries. France has lots of business operations still in parts of West Africa. Do you think that those accusations of France having a kind of neo-colonial business attitude really stack up today?
I mean, if you look at the wave of anti-French sentiment, it does stem from such a perception, and also the way that sometimes France has responded to some of the accusations against it. There have been tense statements between the Sahel and Macron's government in particular, which has prevailed those perceptions, but also a feeling that governments are perceived to be influenced by France. So Cote d'Ivoire's announcement is a way of just forestalling that. With Senegal, it's been a nationalist policy being promoted since Sonko and Faye came into power. And in Chad, it's both that, but also seeking newer partners such as the UAE or even Turkey or Hungary or Russia in the region. So it's a broad mix of these things, but long-term resentment is what has partly led to the quick drawdown of French forces, particularly in the Sahel, but also thinking around what nationalism means when countries are attaining sovereignty.
Beverly Ocheng, there's lots more I'd like to ask you, and unfortunately we are out of time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now let's bring you some other news on the programme. Ethiopia has announced that it is to collaborate with the new African Union force against al-Shabaab in Somalia. The deployments are expected to begin later on this month. Now, Somalia had previously indicated that Ethiopian troops would not be taking part. The two neighbours had been at loggerheads since January last year, when landlocked Ethiopia signed a maritime deal with breakaway Somaliland, which Somalia considers as part of its territory. Now, though, the Somali foreign minister says the countries have agreed to, quote, strengthen bilateral ties. Now, speaking of Somalia, the country has joined four others in assuming its responsibility as a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council. Alongside Denmark, Greece, Pakistan and Panama, Somali diplomats are to serve on the body now for the next 2 years. Now, efforts are underway in the Central African Republic to register some 1.8 million new voters ahead of polls this summer. Officials from the National Election Authority are travelling across the country and are focused in particular on signing up young people and women. The aim is to achieve a record turnout in the vote this July, as our team in Bangui now reports.
Voters flock to enrolment centres in Bangui's 5th arrondissement to register on the electoral roll. Nathan wants to vote for the first time. He says it's his civic duty.
I'm very excited because this is my first time taking part in the electoral process. As a good citizen, I came to register today because I care about my country and I want to see it develop like other nations. I'm here to register so that I can get a voter card and vote for my leaders.
The electoral roll is being revised for the first time since 2020, adding up to 2 million potential new voters who have since turned 18. The European Union has invested over €2.5 million in these elections and has launched an awareness campaign to encourage people to vote. The challenge for the Electoral Authority is to achieve a record turnout from all members of society, including young people and women.
We want people with disabilities to be able to register, minorities and especially women, because we want to see massive participation by women as voters and candidates, so that they are better represented in local decision-making bodies.
The Electoral Authority is set on revising the electoral roll despite threats from armed groups and opposition demands for government negotiations.
Now, as in countries all across the world, in Kenya, social media is a burgeoning industry. Platforms like YouTube and TikTok offer individuals a chance to make money outside of traditional media outlets. And because in Kenya, youth unemployment is high, at some 67%, the phenomenon of social media influencers is proving particularly popular, as Clémence Voller now reports.
This is not a street party, but rather a day at the office. This plaza in Nairobi has become a hub for Kenyan social media content creators. With traditional white-collar jobs scarce, Kenya's youth are looking for creative solutions. For Vincent Otieno and his group of dancers, posting online allows each member to make around $120 a month. They earn money through tips from fans on TikTok and advertisements on YouTube, as well as performing at parties.
Content creation helps us to provide for our bills, and also like we post on Instagram, TikTok and YouTube, we make around $100 in a month, which is better from nothing.
Kenya's overall unemployment rate hovers at 12.7%. However, according to the Federation of Kenya Employers, the under 35 demographic is experiencing the country's highest unemployment rate of 67%.
I did Bachelor of Science in Nursing and Public Health, but just after graduating, I came to a shock in a country that there are no jobs. So I had to be innovative.
For Angeline Muema, a college student, the uncertainty of finding employment after graduation pushed her to find alternative sources of income. With her two friends, she's been making content for a little over a year, earning around $600 a month interacting with fans.
And at the end of the day, maybe I might graduate, yes, and I won't get like a job, you know. So I better like do these videos and I get something.
Though many creators know they will never get rich, social media has offered them an alternative means to support themselves and an opportunity to turn their social media pages into thriving businesses.
Well, that's a wrap from me and the team here on Eye on Africa. Thanks for watching and bye-bye.